to Shireen and I said to her, midlife just came so quickly, it just attacked from nowhere. I mean, I remember when I was growing up and seeing my mom when she was in her 40s, and she really seemed to have it all together. And now that I'm the age that she was at when I was observing her, I realized that it wasn't that easy. I now suspect that for a big part of her midlife, there was a lot of strain, perhaps a lot of some pretense also, a desire to keep it all together, taking care of children, taking care of her elderly parents. It must have been a very challenging time, especially financially as well. So I'm really, really looking forward to today's topic. And yeah, over to you, Owami. Okay, Owami seems to be having issues with her network, so I will just take over from her. Shireen, I'm going to introduce Shireen to you. If you can just give me one moment. Yeah. Okay. Shireen Motara is African feminist leader, an executive coach, a strategist with more than 2 decades of experience advancing women's leadership, economic empowerment, and social justice. She is the founder and CEO of Tara Transform and the founder of the Next Chapter Studio, where she supports women to grow their confidence, their leadership capacity, and financial independence through coaching, consulting, and community initiatives. With a background in law and extensive work across the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, including collaborations with UN agencies, philanthropic institutions, and corporates, Shireen brings deep expertise in navigating structural barriers and creating sustainable pathways for women's success. A passionate advocate for gender equality and economic agency, she focuses on helping women claim their voice, build meaningful careers and businesses, and make empowered financial choices at every stage of life. Thank you, Shireen, for being here. It's an absolute honor to have you here today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mtabi Singh. So Mtabi Singh and I met as you joined my community, my consulting community. So it's really lovely to connect with you in this way now. And hi, everyone. And I see lots of my people here. It's lovely to have you here. I hope that what I share will be of use to you. I had volunteered to participate in this program because I thought that I could add some value, and not because I'm an expert, but more because of my own life experience. And I chose to talk about money in midlife because I am in midlife, and I find that as a coach, women's coach in particular, many women in midlife are at the point where they're having to make big financial decisions, and it can be quite a challenge. And I thought to talk a little bit about that, but also to weave in my own experience and to say that it's a journey. We don't all have it figured out, but there are things we can do. So I will talk today about how we plan for our future and our legacy. So I think at the stage of midlife, one has to start thinking about legacy. It's a bit of a scary thought, but we need to do that. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and the areas that we will cover will be around clarity. So what understanding your financial situation, structure, so building sustainable systems and ways in which to plan and manage your money, And then courage, of course, money comes with a lot of emotions, a lot of baggage, and we need to engage with that. And then last but not least, thinking about legacy. So, if we are at this point in life and we're thinking about money, what is the legacy that we want to leave, which it goes beyond just money, and which I think is quite important. So I think Ntabiseng has already said a little bit about who I am. I'm firstly an African feminist. I am very committed to supporting women and women's leadership, women's well-being, and I guess I always say I exist to make women's lives better. And really, that's what I do in all the different iterations of my life. So we have a company called the Next Chapter Studio, and the Next Chapter Studio has a consulting arm which focuses on strategy, governance, and leadership development for the development sector, which is primarily the nonprofit sector. And then we have a big focus on women's well-being and leadership. It's a big area of our work, and we do it in different ways, through coaching, through our work with organizations, but also through our events and webinars like this. I'm a single mother, a business owner, and a community builder. So building community is essential for me. And Ntabiseng and I were just talking about the consulting community I established a few years ago, and whether I want to monetize it. And I just indicated that I'm not interested in monetizing it, because I really built it as a community for connection, a community for people to share and find opportunities. And, I don't see the need to make any money off it, because I think it brings so many other benefits. And then I'm also an e-commerce founder. So this is the newest thing in my life, where I bought a business from someone, and the business had 4 brands, and I've added our own brand of well-being for the Next Chapter in it. And it's been quite a challenge, believe me, but yeah, I love it. So I guess when we talk about midlife and money, we know that, as we go through life, there are different phases. So the first is around, surviving in our 20s. We want to find a job, we want to make money, and, just survive. So, things are fairly simple still. And, you kind of, your financial patterns are also then informed by either, the way your parents dealt with money, or the way you don't want to deal with money, in terms of, learning from your parents. So for me, for example, in my 20s, I thought, having store cards and so on was the biggest and greatest thing. So, that's what I did. And I thought, because that's what my mother did. And of course, I didn't realize that was her survival strategy as a single parent. And it catches up with you, of course, at some point. And then, reality hits. So in our 30s, we start looking at growth. What are we thinking? What do we want for ourselves? We start looking at property. You may or may not yet have a car, and so on. But you also start thinking about financial security. So, when we get jobs, we start thinking about retirement annuities, insurance, and things like that. And then when we get to our 40s and our 50s, we really start thinking about, am I ready for retirement? Am I living my life the way I've wanted to live? Or is my life going in the right direction? And ultimately, what is it that I want to leave when I'm no longer here? And I think previously, when our parents were in their retirement era, so to speak, it was very much about, okay, I'm retired, I'm sitting at home, and that kind of thing. But for us, for this generation, and I think starting with our generation, it's very different. So this, the 40s, 50s, and further on is really about, what's next? What is my next? And I find that with a lot of women that I'm coaching in this phase of life, there is a very big question around what is next, and not just about money, but about profession, about legacy, about passion, because often we find that, in our earlier careers and so on, we work because we need to make money, but often there's a disconnect between the work we do and our passion and our purpose. And I think for me, that changed in my early 40s, I think, 2016, when I decided, okay, I am fully going into my own consulting business. And as hard as it may be, I want to feel like I'm working and connected to my passion. So, this is the time that you start feeling you want to feel connected to something. And of course, then money also plays a big role in that. So in midlife, I think we face a number of financial realities, but also realities in general. Like one of the realities is I'm in Joburg for work and I forgot my laptop charger at home. So one of the realities in midlife is brain fog and poor memory. So please prepare yourself for that. So the other realities are, of course, that, we are in our peak earning years, but also our peak responsibility years. And we often now, with our generation in particular, we've become what people call the sandwich generation. So in a sense, we sit between our aging parents and children that we have to support. And so, still having to be financially secure is critically important, because we need to be seeing to these family members and these people in our lives. And it creates a lot of financial responsibility and can be quite stressful. We also, as I said, we start thinking about career pivots, side hustles, and new ventures. What is my next? What do I want to do with my life? What is going to give my life meaning now? I really need to feel connected to something. So I want to try and do something else. And what could that be? We may be divorced, we may be widowed and independent. I find that, for example, we have a group of 4 cousins, and within that group, 2 are divorced and 2 are widowed. So, it's, I think in this age, there is a lot of that happening. There are, of course, people whose marriages last, but then it's still about, as a couple, how are we making sure that we are financially secure in our later years? And the idea of independence. So, of course, I'm not sure many of us want to be waiting for SASSA for our own financial independence. So we have to start thinking now about, how exactly are we going to make sure that we are financially independent? But I think there's one big thing that we must think about, and that is the reality of our bodies, our health, our energy. And so while, sometimes I would say the brain is really active and full of energy and wants to achieve a lot of things, the body often is complaining. So, we may have these big dreams and visions, but our bodies may not be fully ready for that. So because we've worked so hard all the years, we've given so much to others and so on, we now struggle with issues of well-being, chronic health issues, energy levels. Those of us who are in perimenopause, menopausal, postmenopausal are all struggling with that. And still we sit with those expectations of ourselves and others. So at this point, I may feel, oh gosh, I'm 55, I still haven't achieved much. I need to still work very hard in order to achieve something. And there are also expectations from others, whether they are our partners, our children, and so on, that we still need to be there for them, we still need to support them, and so on. And that creates some financial complexity for us. So there's this saying that says women are asset-rich in capability, yet liquidity-fragile in structure, meaning that we have a lot of skills, we have a lot to give, but we have spent so much time and energy giving that we have not spent enough time building our own solid financial foundation. And, and that's where we start running into problems. Okay, So I think there are a couple of things that I want to flag here as we start thinking about clarity. So the first is really about I always talk to my clients about a foundation. You have to have a foundation for anything that you want to do. There has to be a strong foundation. When we think about money and financial security, we have to start thinking about what is the current state of our finances. And I think many of us actually run away from that. We don't want to look at the bank statement. We don't want to check. We know when the 25th comes, then the debit orders go off, and then we just start panicking. But we have to make friends with our money. We have to understand what's happening with our money. So we have to understand, for example, how our earnings fluctuate across months, across seasons. And especially those of us who are self-employed or have a side hustle and so on, we really have to pay deep attention to our money and what's happening with our money. And one of the things I have found, for example, now my daughter has started university. She's moved to Cape Town. She's living in a flat, which means my expenses have just skyrocketed. And now for January, for example, there's been a lot of unplanned expenses that I've had to accommodate. And then, of course, you've done all that wonderful stuff and you're like, oh, she's going to phone me and say, thank you so much. And then I get a message and it says, oh, it's my birthday next week. I want to go to this concert of I don't know whoever. So now you have to think, oh, my word, not more money that you have to go find somewhere. But we'll come to that. So for me, the suggestion I want to make to you, and I want to try and be practical, is around your income, is to really understand that. So I have I have a spending tracker, which some people will find very boring, but I literally track every cent that I spend using this tracker, whether I go have a coffee or it's for the business or it's for my personal use or whatever the case is. And I can at any point see how my money is moving and in which direction it's moving. So I want to suggest that you try and track your spending. If you don't have the energy for tracking your everyday spending, then, we have tools called AI that can help you. So what I did, for example, at the end of December was I took all my bank statements for last year. I put it into AI and I said, analyze my spending patterns and tell me what's going on. And it was able to tell me where I was spending money, how I was saving and investing, what percentage I was saving and investing, where I could make improvements, what possible improvements I could make. And then similarly, when this thing happened with my daughter going to university and so on, it started helping me to relook at my budget and start accommodating those expenses. So I think, Tabi saying we should have another session on AI and budgeting so that we can do a practical, you can see the real value of how it can help you. But it is important to understand your money before you can do anything else. If you don't understand where your money is going, what is motivating your spending and so on, then you will in a sense feel stuck. For those of us who have businesses, I want to strongly suggest that you separate your personal and business accounts. And in that way, you are able to make sure that you are managing your business as a business and that your business is not becoming your personal spending purse. So what I have done is I have a separate business account. I mean, I do all the formalities. We're a registered business. We have a separate business account. We have an accountant. We do our taxes and so on. But then allows us, for example, to be registered on the government tender database. It also allows us to get other opportunities which may require us to be a company, to have our BEE certification and so on. So if you are a business, initially maybe not, but if you are a business and you have big ambitions, then I would suggest you think about having a separate business account and getting proper advice in relation to how to manage your business and its money. And then, of course, for us, there's the emotional spending piece. And mine is often Woolies when I'm feeling depressed. Then I feel there's always something at Woolies that can help me feel a bit better. And obviously, it has to be some kind of food or something. So, I understand that we have some of us have these habits, others like shopping. I'm no longer much of a shopper. But I think we need to understand what is it that drives that emotional spending. If, for example, I'm stressed, do I really have to be spending money? What other mechanisms are there that can help me deal with stress? For example, can I rather than, use that money wisely and go for a massage, which will really help me in managing my stress? So it's really about how are we present to the habits that we have built over time that we think are normal, but actually that we can break. And the more present we are to our behaviors, and the things we do in those difficult moments, the better it is for us to then to understand those and then to be able to shift our habits into things that can be more that can help us more rather than harm us. Okay, so here's a few questions for you to think about as we talk. So if you want to think about your personal financial audit, you can copy these, but I will also ask them, the Ntabiseng will send you the PDF of these slides. So firstly, do you understand what your actual monthly obligations are? What are your expenses on a monthly basis? And then secondly, what is your income? So your revenue streams, and which are your reliable income streams? So, where do you get consistent money from all the time? And does your expenses, are they less than your income, for example? Or are they more than your income? So are you always going into overdraft? Are you always having to patch here and there because you don't have enough money? So what is draining you financially and why? I can tell you that there's certain times in the year that I know what drains me financially is eating too much, not really takeaways, but too much Woolies food because I'm too lazy to cook. And last year in particular, I had a very difficult year. And so I hardly cooked and I spent a lot of money on buying food, which of course is not a good idea. But if you understand, why things happen, where they come from, and so on, then you are able to deal with it. So I could understand what drained me financially. But also because I was not a big shopper and so on, I was able to, in a sense, manage some of my money because, I wasn't spending on all fronts, but rather just in one area. Now, for example, I'm trying to be more social, I'm trying to go out more and so on. So that means I need to have money for that and less money on Woolies. And because this goal of being social and active is important to me, I'm very willing to reduce how I'm making Woolies grow their revenue streams. And then the fourth one is about where are you overextended right now? Like for me, I'm overextended now with my daughter, but I know it's this month and the last month and this month that it was difficult because there were a lot of things we had to put in place. But as from March, it will normalize. I've also told her to find a job, a part-time job, because the money is not endless and our children need to learn responsibility, and we'll talk about that also as part of what we think about our legacy. But you have to also understand, where are you overextended right now? I know a lot of people, and I used to be in that place, which is I'm always lending money to people and I'm lending them money that I don't have. So, those are problematic behaviors and we need to get away from that. We want to feel liked, we want people to appreciate us and so on. So we'll even go into debt to make sure that people like us. But actually that's not helping you and it's not going to help you in the long term. So you also have to understand yourself, understand your personal drivers. What are the things that are important to you? If you're a people pleaser, if you want people to like you, if you want to feel like a hero all the time, then you are going to get yourself into trouble because you're wanting to help others. And part of what you need to think about is, what are my boundaries? My boundaries that support my own well-being and allows me to still support others, but within, the confines of what my real possibilities are. Okay, so income options, there are different ones. And I think these are things we need to think about. These are just mine, so don't see them as applicable to everyone. But if you want to think about income options beyond just your job, there are other things that you can consider depending on the skills that you have and the resources that you have at your at your exposure. So for me, consulting has been the foundation of my income base. The e-commerce business is now adding to that. Of course, at the moment, it's just draining me more than adding to it, but hopefully soon it will be in a better space. And then the other things that have emerged from the work that I've done, from my passion, from my work with women and so on. And those are, it's not just digital products, but they tools and resources that I can package and sell, but also take into workshops and so on, and then generate income from that. So part of my learning from my consulting business, from my coaching business, has been that there are things that people need that I can provide, and that I have the ability to create those, and then to generate further income from that. And then also speaking, so being a keynote speaker, last year I was a keynote speaker during Women's Month, and I got paid for it, and I did another one where I didn't get paid. So you have to make decisions about those kinds of things, like, is this an opportunity to be profiled? Who can pay for you speaking or for you doing workshops? We are looking at a lot more initiating our own events and workshops, but it's also a very crowded market. So you have to be, you have to be fairly clear about what's possible and not put yourself into unnecessary debt to do some of these things that may not necessarily bring you money immediately. So the things that you need to think about as you think about your financial stability are, firstly, before you even get to stability and emergency fund, is debt management. It's been a few years now, but it's say 5, 6, 7 years now. But initially, I read a lot of books around financial management, about understanding money, about understanding debt, managing debt, and so on. And it's helped me a lot in terms of managing my own debt, paying off debt, focusing on paying off debt, and then starting to look at savings, my emergency fund, but also doing an emergency fund as an investment rather than just as a bank account. Because if you think about it as an investment and invest it rather than just have it as a bank account, it will gain more interest and it will grow faster. But it is important to have an emergency fund, and the dream is, because it's always the dream is to have 6 months of expenses covered. And that could be for your business and for yourself. So if you want to start an emergency fund, you must start with, okay, the first thing I want to do is have 1 month of expenses covered, and then, go to the next and the next. So not say, oh, I must have 6 months of expenses covered, and then you just overwhelm yourself with that idea. But start small and see what's possible. Some of the things I use that are small that I don't even see are bank your change, for example, on FNB. And that helps me a lot. It takes money into my business account and into my savings and my other savings accounts. I have a small challenge, so I'm going to speak faster now because my laptop battery is getting very low and it's probably going to die soon. So protection is around insurance, medical cover, and having an up-to-date will. I don't know how many of us have an up-to-date will, but we cannot run away from that. And these days, the bank help you do it free of charge. Investments, retirement, and business scaling. So again, if you have a retirement annuity, it may not be enough. Are you supplementing it with other investments to make sure that you are financially secure? And then freedom comes from, those investments starting to grow and pay off and giving you some level of flexibility, you having enough cash reserves to live the kind of life that you want. And that enables you to go into thinking about your legacy, which is, what do I want to leave to the world? How do I do philanthropy and so on? One of the things about redesigning your income, you've heard people talk about, oh, earn money while you sleep. Now, to be honest, in reality, that doesn't happen. Because even if you earn money while you sleep, you still have to do a lot of work during the day to earn that money while you sleep. But there are ways of thinking about that. One is investments. If you invest your money well, it could grow and you need to not manage it a lot. Two is for us who have an e-commerce store, if it does really well, and we set it up well, it could do well and it could earn money while I sleep. But for example, you also need to think about, what is my energy levels? What can I do? What can't I do? I, for example, can't work for 8 hours a day anymore. And so I have to think about, what's possible with my energy levels, and therefore, how will that affect my income? And then again, in my business bank account. So having a business bank account separate from a personal bank account means that I will then be able to manage my business separately, have it as some form of security, and so on. So I think it's really important to think about, redesigning your income, what's possible, but also as you are aging, what are the things you need to consider and how will that influence you, and so on. So just as a reflection, you can think about one practical move you can make this week to redesign your income stream or to help you improve or strengthen your income stream. The emotional side of money, I think we know a lot about that. The fear of not having enough. We're always afraid we don't have enough money. We have too many responsibilities. There's too many expectations. We're never earning enough money and so on. But sometimes it's just the fear that holds us hostage, and we often need to be engaging with where that fear comes from so that we can move out of that cycle. Regret about past financial decisions. If I have to tell you all the regrets I have of past financial decisions, oh, you will cry. So, we all have those, but if you take action to address that, the big thing for me that happened is that I had many regrets, but I took action and I'm in a much, much, much better place. Comparing ourselves with peers and these social expectations, the one thing I'm glad about in my 50s is that I don't have to deal with that. I don't worry about that at all. My peers have their own lives, and
I think we've lost Shireen. Yeah, I think we've lost Shireen. She did mention that her battery was a bit low, and that it might die. Okay, let's maybe give her a minute or two. Maybe she might be able to charge her device and join us again. But I'd love to hear from you. So far, what are your thoughts? What are your reflections? Is what Shireen shared with you today, does it resonate with you? I'd love for us to just have a chat about it. Oh, Sibongile says Shireen also left her charger at home in Cape Town, so I don't think she will be joining us. Yeah, but let's have a conversation, ladies. I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, it's Swangile. I'm willing to say something. Yeah, I have recently left full-time employment at the end of January. And so I had the horrible task of having to engage this money thing last year when I was preparing for it, because I knew I would resign and I knew that I wasn't looking for another job because I wanted to go independent into coaching and consulting work as well. And so that's the first thing I had to do, was really think about refreshing my budget. I had been at some point very religiously budgeting every month in some years before, but I think as your income grows and it feels like your expenses are less than your income, we become a little lax about budgeting and staying on top of the budget. So the budget came back to the fore. That's number one. And number two, one of the things that I did 3 months before I resigned is I made a rule to stop buying takeaways altogether and to eat what's in my fridge, because a lot of the time I think we go grocery shopping and those vegetables wilt and we end up throwing them away while we buy takeaways. It's a difficult thing to do, but I think very useful, because you end up kind of even saving up to 4,000 rands a month, which is really significant. And then the other one, I think, and it might not be right for everybody, but was to stop drinking. I think that was really the one thing I find was my crutch, was to come back from work, feeling stressed and tired and have a glass of wine that turns into 2 glasses of wine. And it's not like box wine, obviously. So you're having Prosecco every night, and it starts to really take a toll just on your finances, but on your energy as well. And I like that Shireen spoke about waning energy. I mean, I'm not 55, but I am nearing 45. And a glass of wine every night at 45 is not the same as when you were 35. So I think it also saves you on the pocket, because Prosecco is 150 Rand a bottle. So that's the other thing. But I suppose, those are my kind of 3 things that I've had to be really disciplined about, and to think about where my income is going to come from. And as I consult, whether I have kind of core clients, anchor clients, to make up, nobody's going to pay you up to 100,000 rands a month if that's what you were getting paid. But as a consultant, you make little bits of money, and it can make up at least part of what your income was. I'll stop there because I see Shireen is back. Thank you, Ntabiseng.
Thank you, Sibongile. Thank you so much for sharing. All right, yeah, Shireen is back. So Shireen, over to you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No
I did tell
problem.
you I have a bit of a drama with my laptop, but now I need to figure out how to share my slides on the phone.
Would you like to WhatsApp it to me and I can share on your
I
behalf?
did. I
Oh,
did.
did you?
Yes. Oh,
Okay,
not
let
to
me.
you, but to the well money. Let me just send it to you.
Okay.
Uh, okay, I forwarded it to you. But I think we were talking about emotions and and the fact that money is very connected to our emotions, and that often, and I don't want to say especially for women because it can sound a bit sexist, but it's often true that for women, money has a big emotional connection. And then, of course, the responsibilities we have to carry, often we are single parents, or we are single, we have to take care of our parents, we have to take care of family members, and so on. And that places a high burden on us, and it causes us a lot of stress. So, you just become fatigued from being the one that always has to be responsible for everything. I can tell you, I have one child, but often I feel fatigued because it's like, it's a never ending slog. You always have to be making sure this is done, that is done, and so on. And of course, children these days, with all the social media and so on, they also have very unrealistic expectations at times about, about what they need. So it can put a lot of pressure on us. I do want to share an example of where I have had to make difficult decisions, because I think managing your money is also about being able to make difficult decisions and being able to be comfortable with that. So as I said, I bought an e-commerce business and I have some people that work there. And because the business didn't do so well at some point, I had to cut staff's hours. And that was a very, very difficult thing to do, especially because these are women with children and so on. And so, having to do that made me feel not good about myself, especially as someone who wants to support women. But it was a decision that had to be made. But it also made them understand that, the business is in a difficult place and that we all have to come together in order to deal with it. So I do think that at times we have to make difficult decisions. We can't please everyone, and everyone won't like us all the time. But that's the reality of life. And for me, at this point where I am, I'm really trying to protect my own peace. I really want peace in my life, and I don't want to be stressed out by other people's stuff. So one of the things I really had to do for myself um, is to have clearer boundaries with people, with others, with my child, with people that I work with, and so on, so that I could start, moving away from this feeling overly responsible for everyone. So that's the one thing. And then the other is, as I said earlier, that there are moments when you're going to have, you're going to have to make some major financial, you're going to have major financial expenses and so on. But it's to see how to manage that in a way where, January and February were tough months because I had to put out a lot of money for different things for Farah, but March, I can recoup that because I'm not going to do all of that. I can spend less on food. I can spend less on going out and so on, and then try to just, balance the budget again. So it's about give and take. So it's not just, you can't just spend and not think there will be consequences for that. So the final thing I want to just talk about is legacy. So, I don't think we often think about legacy, and legacy is not that big thing. It's not Mandela, if I can put it that way. It's about the thing the story people tell about us when we are no longer here. But it's not even many people. It could be our children, it could be our families, and so on. But it's really about what is it that we want to leave this world with. So financially, for example, are we firstly taking care of ourselves? Are we planning for our children's future and for our own future? Are we wanting to think about how then financially we can also have philanthropic goals? What do I want to do with my money? Say when I die and I have some money, must it all go to my children, or do I want to support important causes and so on? For us, for example, for me in particular, I support two causes on a monthly basis. It's not a lot of money, but I feel like at least I'm making a contribution to something. And I hope that, when I'm no longer here, I can continue to provide some support to them in some small way. And then at an intellectual level, many of us are very experienced, capable, and so on. What are we giving the world? What are we offering the world? What can we offer the world? Are we thinking about, our intellectual legacy, the things we know, what we can teach, what we can document? A big thing for Black women is that our stories are not documented. Nobody is reading how famous we are and how hard we work. We're only reading about how famous white men are and how hard they work. But actually, we work much harder than them, and our stories also need to be told. So we also need to think about, are we telling our stories? Are we documenting our stories for girls who look like us to be able to feel confident that they will be able to get there as well? And then relational, who are we building relationships with? Who do we want to support, uplift, and connect with? For me, relationships are crucial. They are the foundation of how I live. My clients often become my friends. I stay connected to clients that I've worked with 10, 15 years ago, even though I'm not working with them, because I will always think about them. I care about community. I care about helping others. And therefore, for example, having like my WhatsApp channels and so on are ways in which I can create support and community, which doesn't necessarily need money. It may need a bit of my time, but it creates space for people to connect, to come together, to collaborate. And then structurally, have you put in place systems that is going to support you in your later years? Have you thought about what's going to happen if you have a business with that business in your later years? And have you thought about your child, your children, the people that you support, and what you are leaving for them in later years? So I think that legacy is not just about, this big reputation, but it's also about these things that we've talked about now: financial, relational, intellectual, and structural. So think about, what are the things you want to do for yourself? What are the things you want to do for those close to you? And then what are the things you want to do for your community or for causes that you are passionate about? So some practical steps around that are, firstly, update your will. I'd like to see if you can tell me in the chat if you have a updated will. I'd like to see how many of us have an updated will. Teach your children about money and values. And I think that's crucially important in this world that we live in now, because, everything is commercialized. Be clear about your beneficiaries on every policy and account. So are you clear about who your beneficiaries are on your policies and your accounts? In fact, I found one of my policies the other day, and my mother's my beneficiary, and my mother passed away in 2010. So we need to check these things. I've talked about being invested in causes that align with your purpose. So, I try to support causes that are aligned with my purpose and my passion. And whether that's with money or my time or my energy, I try to do something because it also makes me feel good. And then document passwords, accounts, and digital assets. There are now apps and things that help you put all those things together. I had a spreadsheet at some point where I had all this information, and I think it's about time I need to update it again. But remember, if something happens to you, how are people going to know? Like with me and my 10 million apps and technologies, I don't know how they're going to know. So I need to put it in one place for someone to be able to access. There are also things like, for example, your Facebook account. I get very upset when I see people who passed away's Facebook account showing up on my feed. And I've nominated someone to close my Facebook account when I'm no longer around. And then for your business is to it's about building a business that can go on without you. So the legacy is really, can that business continue if you are no longer there? And this is part of what I'm doing with my business now, is trying to put in place systems that allow the business to grow, the business to operate even when I am not there. Okay, I think I'm going to end there. And really just to say that I think it's small steps that get us there. And prioritize yourself as much as you prioritize others. And in terms of, what you give, the time, your energy, your financial well-being, and so on, give some of that time and energy to yourself. And you will see that when you are in a better place, it helps you to then be able and be open to helping others. So, Ntabiseng, I will end there.
Okay, thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you. We really, really appreciate that. Let me just check if there are any comments or any questions for Shireen. Yeah, I loved your talk. Thank you so much, Shireen. I found this time of my life to be quite overwhelming, actually. There are just so many moving pieces, so much to consider. And it often feels that any goal that I have or anything that I want to achieve, there is a monetary element to it. And that adds more pressure and more complexity to managing money. So I absolutely loved how practical your presentation was. And what I also love about you is you have this calm about you. You know, you make me feel like everything is going to be okay. So I love that, and thank you so much for that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And please do share the slides with people who have signed up. And my email address is on there as well. So if people want to get in touch, but also maybe let's think about doing something like more practical around how, for example, we can use AI with analyzing bank statements and doing our budgets and so on.
Okay, awesome. We can definitely talk about that offline and invite guests to come and do something more practical. Thank you so much, ladies. I will share the presentation. I'll also share the recording with you. I'll also share the link to our community, our money relations community. It's a membership where you have an opportunity to interact with other women, other people who are also on different stages in their financial journeys. We call our membership the Financial Wellness Club. And what we've really tried to create is like a gym where you have a place where you have a community, you have people who have a similar dream as you do, who have similar goals as you do. We invite different experts to come in and talk to us about different money-related topics. And because it's structured, it allows you to focus on creating a will. It allows you to focus on strategies to get out of debt. Next month, for example, we have a panel discussion on investing. We have a panel discussion also on network marketing. So I will send you the link and you can think about it and see if the structure is something that can interest you and something that can benefit you. But thank you all so much for your time and for being here this evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and yeah, hope to see you in our next sessions. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you and bye.